welcome to another wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look, finally, at Napoleon's Imperium from Compass Games. So, this game is something.
It is something.
We spent all day today playing this.
We started at 9 a.m.
Yeah, we were at 9 a.m.
Reviewing the rules, setting up,
Yes.
going over things. And frankly, we spent at least an hour to an hour and a half debating rules before we even played.
Yes. So, in total playtime was probably like 6 hours that we did with this.
And we did 5 turns.
Yes.
6 turns. We did
turns.
6 turns.
And so, again, this was our first time, so it was slow, but we played this 7 players. It can do 2 to 8.
Yep.
We did 7, and as such, you know, lots of talking and discussing the rules and trying to figure it out. Part of that is because the rule book has a lot of vagaries in it.
I think the rule book needs to be rewritten, reorganized.
Yes.
Because how many times did we say, okay, where's that leader in exile rule or whatever? And we couldn't find it. So that was a lot of our time just trying to find those things.
So this is a whole grand strategic Napoleonics game. Starts in 1798, goes until 1815. Everyone controls one of the kind of major nations or like kind of groups of nations. And 4 of you sit on one side of the table. That's kind of the kind of allied coalition. And the other 4 of you sit on the other side of the table, and it's kind of the Napoleonic kind of adversarial coalition. So it's Spain, France, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire are playing against Russia, Nordic countries, Prussia, and England. So that's kind of how it divides up. So we had 3 players on one side, 4 on the other. One was playing 2. And, you know, it was big, it was long. The gameplay itself is similar to something like Axis and Allies.
Yeah,
right?
It's kind of a dice chucker.
Yeah.
You assemble all your dice, you roll, you hit on a certain number, you remove those results, and rinse and repeat.
And
until...
it's bucket of dice, like you said. You get the stacks sometimes get pretty large. You're going to roll 20 dice and some of the big attacks and things like that. And you just keep going until one side is dead.
Yep.
And then
so there's no retreat rule.
Yeah.
There's no tactical. There's nothing.
Yeah. They wrote optional retreat rules later that you can download if you wanted to, but it's a game they tried to keep very simple. Like it's like build some guys, put them out, fight and move. You know, tried to keep it that style of game with a few cool little battle cards that give you effects and where you pick up victory points and things from.
I think it's a little bit of a misnomer. They're not necessarily battle cards in the way that we normally think of. Yes. I think of battle cards as, I've got 4 cards in my hand that I can play to increase my defense, my attack, or do something. These were literally battle effect cards.
Well, and they're battle loss cards.
Right.
And that's what they say in the rules. They're like, these could be called battle loss cards. You draw a card if you lose a land battle.
Yeah.
And the cards sometimes have a positive effect, a lot of times have a negative effect, and sometimes just have kind of a neutral. Kind of bit of thing. So, you know, you're moving and attacking. You know, you gain a territory from the opponent. That opponent, you know, you get a victory point for that. They also draw a battle card, and something worse might happen. It might snowball, or they might kind of get some reinforcements somewhere else to kind of bolster.
Or some economic income that will bolster them as a treaty, or...
Yeah, and those are very varied. Each player has a deck of 20 of those, and some cards are similar in all of them, but it's like 50-50, you have unique cards in there at least.
One of the ones I thought that we debated several times, because it happened at least twice, was a card called Defeated, Not Destroyed. So what ultimately happened, this card came up as a battle effect, right? So you lost the battle, your units were wiped, 3 units, 12 units, it just depends on...
And I had it was like 8.
Yeah.
It was not an instant.
This card comes up and it basically says, you live to fight another day, you don't get destroyed, reassemble that army you just retreated.
Yeah. Which was huge.
Yeah, it was...
that was very, very, very helpful.
It was ironic because the first time it happened, it was simply 1 unit.
Yeah, it was a 1-unit army, and it was like, well, that was kind of a waste.
But then that second time it happened, you had 8 or 9 units. So that's the kind of cards they are. So I think we all decided you just need to check your strategic mind at the door and understand those cards are just going to sometimes
this
mess you over.
In an Axis and Allies style, that's kind of what you have to view this going into it.
Yeah.
Like, this is a beer and pretzel style game. Making big stacks of guys, tossing them around Europe, chucking a bunch of D10s. Love a good D10. And
D10s are so cool because the results are so varied. This game, a 10, a 0 was a 0.
Yeah.
And I like that. Always missed.
Well, 0 was a 10,
right,
which always missed,
but
because
it
you're
always
trying to
missed.
roll low in this
Yeah.
one. But yeah, and it allows for a larger variety and spread of different types of units. And the other cool part of the units in this one is they're counters instead of miniatures, right?
Yeah.
So they have an attack value and a defense value, which are different. And seeing what those look like across...
It's unique.
Very cool.
Each country has a different... Some units are better on attack, some are better on defense. And that was kind of cool.
Yeah,
it
like
was unique.
The Russian infantry, attack on a 4. That's very bad.
6 defense.
Defend on a 6. Good luck.
So...
And whereas I think the French infantry are a 5-5. So they're like pretty solid both ways. And I just... Little nuances like that, it gives you that little extra layer on top of something like it, which was cool. But, because of the grand scale of this, and it's 1798 to 1815, you have to kind of check some of your historical stuff at the door. This isn't the deepest, richest, most historical simulation. It's not pretending to be. It doesn't try to be that. Like, you don't have the different shifting alliances and coalitions and things like that. It's just kind of, you got fixed sides here, and you kind of fight with those until the end kind of thing. So you just, you miss out on some of that stuff. But again, it's not designed to be this massive, deep game.
Well, and what I would say, that type of coalition and turncoating, and it's reflected in the cards sometimes.
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's not like, oh, you lose an entire country. But there was a time, Courland, here in Russia, defected. The French showed up, had a kind of a quick invasion, and that was an effect of a battle card. So it does kind of show some of that shifting alliances through those battle cards.
And you had, I think, was it Bavaria?
They revolted and kicked me out.
They declared independence, and they became a neutral country.
And that was very bad at that time of the game. I was trying to build up, and I lost.
It was very early.
Yeah, I lost 2 income points, and it was very hard for me to recover from that.
And that's something to note. In this game, you're going to do a lot of combat.
Yes.
But it's capturing a country or a region, and you're looking at those economic values, because that's going to power your economy for next turn to build more units, right? It's a lot of, there's this economic engine behind it that's very simple. It's just your territories, that's how many points you have, that's how much you can build based on this menu. But that's a very, very crucial part to this game. And so you'll see very, very, back and forth fights with certain areas until, a side can get big momentum and kind of push the front somewhere else.
Yeah, Saxony and Vienna, I think there were 5 battles on each side of that. So those were areas were hotly contested.
And you just go back and forth with each other. A lot of, Crimea and the Ukraine and Moldavia, all of those areas where it's the Turks and the Ottomans and the Russians, we exchanged at least 8 each, which means those changed, that whole area changed sides like 16 times in the course of 6 years. And so these back and forth on the front lines, it's a lot of that kind of stuff, and you're trying to make that breakthrough and then be able to reinforce it so that they don't just bring it back. And then you move that front further out, and your supply lines get slightly more stretched because you can only build units in your capital, so that it takes longer to reinforce.
And the movement values of those, you don't have rail lines, you don't have, that kind of thing. You do have a leader that can add a movement point to certain stacks, but it's infantry typically are 1, and you're marching one territory to the next, so it's going to take you 3 turns to kind of get out to the front.
Well, and in Western and Central Europe, there's a lot of spaces in regions, so the marching is very slow.
Out here in Russia,
out in Russia,
just a few spaces, big spaces.
In the Middle East, in the Balkans, the map, how it's drawn is very interesting. But and this was something that came up in the game, the Ottoman camel special unit has 3 movement.
Yeah,
that is a lot of movement in this. You can reach and reinforce and touch a lot of places. They're terrible on defense. They just got body bags on defense, but they have, I think, 6 attack.
Very good on
and you
attack.
Can buy a bunch of them. They're kind of cheap. You can move them real far as a strike force, and I did that a lot. And they're very, very powerful.
Ironically, we had camels in Cilicia, right? Yes. We also had camels ending the game here in Galicia, so it's pretty north. I'm not sure camels are accustomed to the cold weather. But there's some of that historical oddity.
Yeah.
But it was a neat unit that allowed you to have a lot of flexibility. And frankly, Napoleon and France and the Ottomans were really what carried the Napoleonic coalition here to victory.
Yeah. I was helping to keep the Russians at bay and free you up as well. It was, so, this was a long game.
It was. I mean, we played for 8 hours. Literally.
Yeah, and played 6 turns out of, 17?
Yeah.
So
this would be an all-weekend game with 8 players. I mean,
and maybe it would go faster if you're a bit more experienced. But there's either a lot of downtime if you've got 8 players, or if you've got 2 players, you're just in it the whole time, and it's a lot of brain burn because you control.
Well, we also kind of at the beginning of every turn had a 5 or 10 minute, not negotiation, discussion,
like a strategy discussion.
Wait, what are we going to work on this turn? Yeah. So that took probably an hour all told. We also had a couple players that maybe were disconnected a little bit. That slowed it down a little bit as well. But I think overall, the game, for what it is, I think accomplishes what it set out to do.
Yeah, and I had different expectations.
I did as well.
Game. I didn't, and that's kind of my own fault for maybe not doing some research on it. I wasn't sure what this was going to be. I thought it would maybe be a little bit deeper and crispier and crunchier.
Yeah.
But, it is very... The reality of the rules is that they are quite simple.
Yeah, there's not a lot
Gleaning that from the rule book is very difficult.
Right.
But what you're actually doing, it is very
simple.
Risky, Axis and Allies-y, almost a little bit War Room, where it's just like a ton of guys, ton of dice, chuck some stuff, make some progress, get knocked back. That's a lot of what the game is. Yeah. And, I know I had an enjoyable time doing it.
Well, to me it was enjoyable because, once again, it's a light dice chucker with 7 good friends here. Yes. We were having a good time. I would classify this as a beer and pretzel game.
Absolutely.
Do not buy this thinking this is an in-depth historical simulation of the Napoleonic Wars. You will be disappointed in that if you buy it under that auspice. Yes. So do not do that. Understand, beer and pretzel, although I made the comment, it's not really a beer and pretzel game because 8 hours in, you've had 6 or 7 beers.
You'll never finish the whole game.
Yeah. So understand it's that lighter style of game. So I think that's important. I think these cards are very interesting.
Gosh, and they look so good though. They're beautiful cards.
They are.
You just you use it, the effect happens, they go away. It's not like a CDG where you can ogle the cards the whole game.
Right.
Which was a little bit of a shame. But yeah, I had fun. I know that not everyone at the table had fun all the time.
Well, and here's what I would say, and I will take blame for this.
No, yeah. And you're allowed to.
Literally, as the Vienna, or the Austrian player, the Prussians go first. You are set up right at odds immediately, and the Prussian player took it to me and attacked my capital, and I lost my capital before I even took my first turn.
Yeah, before you could even do anything. And so that awards them 30 points. It awards them another 10 because your spy has to be there as well.
And
20.
my spy died.
So you lose 50 points immediately, and it cripples your economy, and it does a whole bunch of bad stuff.
And I frankly spent the entire game just trying to claw back with your help. Ottomans helped me quite a bit. France helped me quite a bit. Liberated me. So I let that affect my enjoyment of the game probably for the first 3 turns. And then I think, for me, I started to say, "Hey, Grant, just go with it. Go at our opponents a little bit, trash talk a little bit, have a good time, encourage the allies." So I think as long as you go into that, you're going to have that kind of that attitude. You're going to have a good experience with it.
Yes, I think it was funny because we played for a couple hours in the morning. Mm-hmm. Everyone had lunch, and then everyone came back, and I think the game was much better at that point. Because the morning, setting it up and trying to learn the rules was
a little exhausting.
Very very, very difficult. The rules should not be as obfuscated as they are.
Yeah.
Like, and the comment that we said was, when you read the rule book, it's like someone describing the game to you, but you have to then glean the specific rules from that. Whereas I'm used to something like a GMT rule book, or even other Compass game rule books, where it's like it's a manual, and you say units can do this, they may not do this. On your turn, you do this, and then this, and then this, and within that framework, you can do this, this, and this. This part's not allowed.
Yeah.
And this is like trying to figure out the various intricacies of the rules is difficult, and that's partly because there aren't that many intricacies. And
right.
We're a group of people who wanted a bit more clear delineations of like, this is how this works.
We're also,
not.
I think almost everybody in the room was more of a seasoned gamer.
Yes.
A seasoned war gamer. I mean, over to our left, we have a pretty significant, we're not playing it.
Yes.
A very significant Hex Encounter war game set up.
They have Lucky Forward. Is it Lucky Forward?
Yes. Yeah, Lucky Forward from Decision Games.
Yeah, GOS systems. So like the people we're playing with,
no war
hardcore.
Games. And I think going into that, we thought it would be a little more crunchy. So I think that started us off on a little rocky perch.
People were like, hey, what about this rule? And I'm like, I don't know. And so you kind of read the movement rules for the sea, and it's like, it doesn't state explicitly where this thing happens, where you would expect it to be.
Yeah.
And that was frustrating. So I think everyone kind of got off to a bad start. We kind of went away, played a couple turns, had some lunch, came back, and I felt like the afternoon when we played for the last 6 hours, it went by much quicker at a quicker pace.
It did.
Everyone was doing kind of what they were supposed to do, and like everyone had the rules kind of down, and it moved a lot better. And I think the mood lifted a bit as well.
And I think that's typically the way bigger games are. You know, you figure it out.
But like, you're a couple extra play aids and a much clearer rule book away from it. Would
having
be
a better
very
experience.
Quick to learn, and right off the bat, you're having a much better time.
Yeah. One of the other elements I wanted to talk about, because I thought, actually, this was one of the elements I was more excited about when we were reading up on it. They have these victory cards for different aspects that you accomplish, right? So you have a captured commander. Any battle where you defeat your enemy and they had their leader, you get 10 points. It's kind of cool.
Yes.
I had 3 or 4 of those because I did some great defenses. Spy death. You kill someone's spy, you get 20 points. Happened a couple of times.
Also very difficult.
Victories at sea, you got 10 points. A captured capital, which happened one time, you got 30. And then a successful land defense, you get 10. So those became things that we were almost in some ways hunting.
Yeah.
And understanding the ultimate final score was 178 from the Napoleonic side, 148, I think, for the...
Yeah, it was like 171 to 148 or something like that.
You know, made out of those points plus flags captured.
Yes.
So it was a very interesting element that added into it, adding a scoring mechanism that wasn't just, I controlled this many territories. So that was kind of interesting. The other thing I would say about the game, graphically, I think the map is very cool.
Yes.
It's a simple map. You know, it's an area movement map. But as you can see, you know, the score is all the way on the outside. Lots of colors that coincide with the factions. The different territories are color-coded. You've got your neutrals, and then each area. I like the way the map looked. It actually got me excited about the game and helped me to enjoy that.
Yeah, you got a bunch of pieces, bunch of cool, artworks on them, and flags everywhere.
Well, the artwork, I think it's just clip art. I'm going to be honest. I felt like maybe those could have been... I
enjoyed them. I thought they were fun.
Yeah, they could have been maybe a little more upgraded. Yeah,
the only issue with the map, and this was kind of our fault, is that we had to play... Somehow, well, it was random draw. That's how it happened.
Yeah.
We weren't being mean. The person who was playing Spain is red-green colorblind.
Yes.
And Spain is green, and Portugal next to it is red.
British
and
controlled, yeah.
British is red. And so you have to put the control flags out to really help looking at those at a glance. That's the only thing where it was like, oh no. And then, a couple more play aids here and there maybe. A detailed sequence of play and what you can do and everything.
Well, the setup... player aids, there's only 1 for each faction, so you've got 2 for 8 people potentially.
So you set this up and then you never look at this again.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of like rules in brief. But I'm used to very detailed and for there to be 8 play aids, 1 for each player if you're doing this 8-player game. Which which I think is how you should play it. Playing this with 2, you'd be doing a lot the whole time.
Yep, you'd be more engaged.
A lot of stuff to manage. That's it's this economy, buying some units, attack, move, and then you do the same, and then I do it again and do it again.
Yeah.
So I think playing with 8 was enjoyable from that standpoint.
Well, it's how many games are made for 8 players? Very, very few.
Very few.
So this is one that allows that. You might as well take advantage of that. Go to a con, get 8 friends together, enjoy that. That's why we wanted to play this.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this for almost a year. This is a 2021 release, by the way.
Yes.
So here it is, March of 22.
Yes.
We are playing it. We'll include it in our played games of 21, and it will be considered for inclusion. But, once again, that's what it's made for. 8 friends getting together, having a good time.
Yes.
Yelling, screaming, arguing,
Spend a long time playing it, chuck a ton of dice.
Yeah.
Have a riot.
I do like dice mashers. I've always enjoyed
They absolutely
rolling a
have
bunch
their
of
place.
dice.
Absolutely.
But, understand that's what this game is. Beer and pretzels, light, dice masher. That's what you're getting.
What I'll do is I'll show you briefly how it works. The board's massive. It's
Yeah.
22 by 34s. And then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So here's a look at the map. As you see, massive map of Europe. Everything's kind of divided up into these regions. The regions have values on them. That's their economic value. And they're in different colors for that's kind of their home nation who owns them. So we have Britain, Spain, France, Prussia, Austria, Ottoman Empire, Russia, and then they call it the Nordic kingdoms? Nordic nations is what they're called. And so everyone plays one of those. So the Prussians, you get your own little play-aid card that has like your unit's capabilities and costs. And then there's a turn order that's fixed. So you think about something like Virgin Queen or Here I Stand with their fixed turn order of who goes what and when. This has that as well. On your turn, you spend your income. And your income is tracked on this income track that's all the way around the outside. So you can kind of see here this red British track goes from 1 to 30. And then you've got a coin that so you can mark. So like, oh, well, now I've got 30 plus 11. I've got 41, for example. But the first thing you do is you spend that for purchases. So you have a little menu on your played card. So I'm going to spend, using the military costs here, I could build a fleet for 8 of my 11 points. So you get a little fleet from your supply. And then I've got 3 points left because I'm doing very poorly as Britain in this one. And let's see, I could buy an infantry or I could buy a cav. So I'm going to purchase an infantry, and I've got 1 spare which gets wasted. So I've got an infantry and a boat, and those go into this little tiny holding box here, which is your purchase tray, because you build at the beginning of your turn, and you place them at the end of your turn. And there's, captured leaders can go in there, or there's card effects that put units in there, so you can get things back slightly other ways as well. Then what you do, your turn is simply do all the attacks that you want, and then you do all your moves that you want. If a unit attacks, it cannot move. But you can move and attack. So you can kind of roll that into that, but you have to attack at the end of that if you're doing it in the attack phase. I know that sounds a little bit complicated, but here's what it is. The British are all kind of penned in, so that's actually kind of a bad example. So let's just kind of show you that with some French units here. So these guys are adjacent to here, so you can just do an attack. These guys have a movement value of 2. They got an M2. A5 is their attack value, and a D5 is their defense value. So move 2, if they're adjacent, they spend a movement point to go in here and do an attack. If they were successful and killed these guys, they have 1 more movement point. They could move in here and attack here. And that would be they've used up all their movement points and they've done attacks. If they wanted to just move, you have to do that after all the attacks have ever been made, and then you just move your movement value. Okay, then we got those guys back. But something like this cannon, for example, if he was to move an attack at somewhere adjacent, this is obviously friendly, but you move an attack, he can't then move again because he's out of movement points. So Cav and some other units with multiple movements, if they're with a commander, they can kind of do the attack and then a breakthrough attack if they're successful. But a lot of units just have one movement, and so you just kind of move adjacent and do an attack that's adjacent to you. So what does an attack look like? Well, let's kind of roll one up here. So we got this stack of units here. Oh, that's a pretty spicy stack. Yeah, let's do that. So we have this Austrian army. And we have infantry, artillery, and a leader. And then we'll pit them up against some Russian infantry. Why not? So these guys are going to attack. Let's say the Austrians are attacking. This is a dice chucking fest. So you're going to grab a bunch of dice. If I'm attacking, you think about kind of Axis and Allies. You're trying to roll lower than their attack value. So currently, these infantry need to get a 5 or less, and the artillery need to get a 7 or less. Now, before the combat, I have this leader, and I can assign him to either category of or either type of unit. So if I attach him to him, all my infantry hit on an attack +1, so an attack 6, or an attack 8 for these 2 artillery. So there's some choices you've got to make. Do you want to definitely hit with these, pretty much, or do you want to probably hit with these? So that's, some interesting choices that you get to make. And one other thing to note, this is 1 unit, the red border is 2 units, the blue border is 5 units. So currently we've got 5 units each, and things can get pretty spicy and very unpredictable when you have an even number of units. So I'm going to stick the leader on him, and he's going to do all of his attacks, and then we'll do all of the attacks for the other guy. So he's going to attack. So I've got 1, 2, 3 units needing 6s to hit, 6 or less. So we rolled 1 hit. This is a 10. This is a 9. Those are both misses. That's very bad. And then, so I've got 1 hit. And then we've got 2 7s. And I rolled a 1 and a 3, so I've got 3 hits. Good job, everyone. So I scored 3 hits, and then they're going to roll. They've got 5 units, because of that blue border is 5 units. And because this is the part that kind of got me at the beginning of the game as well. They don't attack, they're defending. So they use their defense roll, but their defense roll is attacking the other unit. So I'm going to roll 5 dice, needing a 5, because they're the defender in this particular battle. And I rolled 3 hits. That was pretty good. I messed it up. So we take 3 hits apiece. So at this point, we're going to kill these 3, because remember, it's 2 + 1. And then we're going to have to make some change with these 3. These guys are going to die. And then we will get 2 of them back. And in this game, you keep going. Now, all my infantry have been eliminated. That does not mean I can assign this to him. His bonus is just not used anymore in the battle. So we're going to do another round of combat. So we've got 2 dice needing 7s. I rolled a 5 and a 4, so I'm going to hit. So I know I'm going to eliminate everyone. And let's see if they can hit me back. They rolled a 9 and a 4, so they only do 1 hit because they needed a 5. So these guys both die. I lose 1 of these, which, good gracious, do I have a spare artillery somewhere? It's so far away! So at the end of the battle, only one of us is standing, and it's me. Great, I win. So what happens when you win? Let's say that was over here in Denmark. What happens is the little national flag that marks control of it, the Austrian player takes that, puts it on their player board. That is a victory point for them. And then they also put their one out, so that if it is ever reconquered, you get a victory point for that. So I control this, I've got a unit in it. You have to have a unit in an area to control it. So if we both eliminate each other, which can happen, and happened quite a few times to us, it's a draw, and everyone's just dead, and the nation reverts back to its home nation's control. So basically we control this, good job, I got a victory point for taking that, and then the purple player who lost the battle draws one of their battle cards. So the battle cards are in a deck of 20 cards, and you draw one, and you see what happens. So we have Order of the Seraphim, and it says +1 attack to general next turn. So this little Nordic general gets +1 attack next turn. Because he, Some of the bonuses are a positive thing. You lost, but you got a medal, and he's going to fight harder next time. This one here is a disaster. No income for this particular area next time. Let's say it, Zeeland, I think. So these two, you don't get those two next time, and -2 fleets and 1 artillery. So you got to look on the board, see your 2 fleets, those get removed, and -1 artillery from the board. Can't remove him, so I got to remove one from home. That's extremely bad, right? And a lot of these cards, we've had a lot of the cards were very bad. Some of them were very good, like they had a lot of economic gains on the coalition side. But man, it was like you'd lose a battle and it would pile on, or you'd lose a battle and you'd get a miraculous retreat. It was all you'd pull a card and you never knew what was going to happen. And that was a kind of a fun part of the game. It was a bit chaotic at times, but that's how these battle cards work. You draw them when you lose a battle and some other effect happens to you. So that was pretty cool. Once you've done all the attacks you want to do, then you can do your kind of your normal moves that cannot end in combat. So you're just kind of moving within your own spaces. So you have to have guys in every space as well. You can't leave spaces vacant. So we'll just kind of keep some guys out. So that's the point at which you're like, okay, let me move these guys. They're 1 movement to reinforce this flank. Because then everyone that I had purchased in the purchase phase, if you think about the British, they bought that boat, and the Austrians had bought a bunch of infantry, for example. Those have to go in your capital. So you're constantly flowing guys out of your capital to support other places, and then at the end of your turn, you dump a bunch of guys in the capital. So it's generally speaking always somewhat protected at least. And then you just move on to the next turn. Next person's going to buy a whole bunch of stuff. They're going to do their attacks. They're going to do their moves to kind of reinforce. And then they're going to dump a bunch of guys in their capital. And you do this over and over again, and you get some of these swirling battlefields around here. A lot of action around here, especially in kind of that early and mid-war kind of period. We had Ottomans at one point kind of all the way out here, and then they get counterattacked because they're not very good in defense. So there was a lot of movement here. This was just titanic stacks going back and forth with 20 dice each kind of a thing. That was wild. And a lot of fighting over Holland and Hamburg, just so much going on. And then you've got the sea battle where you got the Royal Navy doesn't really exist at this point because they've just been wiping each other back and forth. But the British economy is so bad because they lost Portugal and they've lost Hanover back and forth a number of times that they just haven't been able to replace it as quickly. And so at this point, we called the game because strategically it was kind of a mess. Prussia was about to collapse. The Nordic countries at that point would probably have to pull back or expend themselves. And then, these guys are very isolated and we're keeping them pinned in. All these Spanish troops are going to start moving. And, over the course of the next 10 years, it would probably have been an inevitability. But that's kind of how this game works. You chuck a ton of dice. You will regularly have stacks like this. And they'll be here and here, and you just chuck a ton of dice at each other. And it's fun, and you just aggregate all of these losses, and everyone dies, and you draw these cards, and things happen to you. So that's kind of how the game works. It's not a complicated game. Not as complicated as the rules might have you believe from their opaqueness, is what I would say. But that's how it works. What we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the game and how it functions. I had an enjoyable time playing this.
Yeah, I don't think there's a doubt. Big war games like this are fun. They're enjoyable.
It just, the on-ramp to get the rules down was...
needed some help.
Yes, it was too much. So everyone was very frustrated at
and
first.
It wasn't too much because it was rules intensive.
The rules are not complicated.
Or even fiddly. I felt like the rules are fairly understandable.
Yeah.
They're just not explained well. So you've got to do them a couple times to really figure it out.
Yes.
It should have been explained better, and I think that's why you're saying the on-ramp.
Yeah, and we had, we were even having the video tutorials that Andrew, the designer, did, and you're like, those are okay. They show you, some of the stuff in action, but it doesn't say, you may do this, you may do that, you may not do this.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm used to in my war games, and I think I like to know my boundaries. Then I know whether I can work within those boundaries.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like the rules are just not, frankly, very clearly written.
Yeah.
Once we had it down though, had a blast, played it all day, and I had a good time playing it.
Well, and I enjoyed it as well. I think we had some good back and forth, some good camaraderie was had. I would like to see this game as a miniature game.
Oh,
and like an Axis and Allies.
In the rule book, I think, or on the back of it, there's some pictures of the Australian design group who have been massaging this for the last few years, and they've got
miniatures.
They've got figures on stacks, and it looks cool. It's wild.
It would be kind of cool. So maybe those big leader, figures that you could put, and I don't know. It would just add to the immersion and the theme capturing of this game. But yeah, enjoyable. Get this. Play with your 8 friends. If you don't have 8 friends, maybe you shouldn't get it. You can do this solo because you're just going to 8-fist it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of hidden information.
There's no hidden information.
Yeah.
There's no reason you couldn't do that.
Right. And I think it's a simple, mechanically simple game. And strategically, you know what you got to do.
You'll see some anachronistic things.
Yep.
You'll see some kind of wild and crazy things. But that's what the game is supposed to be, I think.
Right.
I think that's what they were kind of going for is, let's play around in the Napoleonic era without it being bogged down in, now we're going to have all of this diplomacy phase and trying to change stuff.
That may have been a very cool addition to it, though.
Sure.
Some diplomacy.
But you then take an 18-hour game and make it a 24-hour game.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think they've tried to, keep the rules as simple as possible. There's no retreat rules. You just keep going until someone's dead, right?
Now, there's some optional retreat rules that were later made, but they're not included in the rule book. We decided to shun that kind of thing and just play it as it was written.
Play as it was
intended
to kind of be. But yeah, we had some highs, we had some lows. There was some stand-up cheering moments when we rolled the dice. I had 3 units in one battle. I rolled 3 10s.
Yep.
All auto misses. The odds of that are astronomically low.
There was another really cool roll when you have naval combat, which I thought was very cool.
Yes.
If you win and you have a certain number of ships, that you have a chance to kind of commandeer one of the smoking hulks and kind of retrofit it, but you got to roll a 1.
Well, in that battle, he had to roll a 1 because he only had the 1 left.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, that was kind of cool. He rolled a 1.
It's like, and everyone's like, whoa!
Because the naval part, particularly in the Atlantic, I thought was very, very important.
Yes.
It kept the British at bay. It stopped them from shuttling troops across, allowed Napoleon to really kind of run rampant across Central Europe, and the Ottomans kind of out east were really holding the Russians off. So the naval became very important. Without that, I think the British would have had much larger impact on the battle, and it would have went a different way.
Yeah, we did a good job.
Yeah. Well, we didn't do it. Our allies did it.
The coalition.
We're
just taking credit.
We're taking credit. France and Spain did a hell of a job fighting that naval war.
Yeah, they had naval supremacy, basically.
Yeah.
Or at least they just kept the British in check. It was very interesting. Yeah, now you've said that, it was cool how they were just different theaters and there was things going on.
Everybody kind of has a role. I felt like me as Vienna, I had to survive.
Yeah, you're pinning Prussia.
Yep.
And whilst France comes in to relieve you and knock them out, I'm pinning Russia,
keeping them from
they
getting
can't
it.
come and outflank us.
So everybody plays their role.
Yeah.
The Nords were very interesting.
Yeah.
They supported Prussia, and tried to
they're
support
trying to stymie the
Russia.
French advance, or stymie my advance by supporting the Russians. The Spanish are trying to, take Portugal and then build a ton of ships, do all of that.
So I thought everybody had their roles, and I think everybody understood those roles and played those very well.
Yeah.
That's why it ended up, actually for both sides, very hotly contested. I think it was a close game. Had we played another 4 to 6 rounds, I think our coalition would have run the board.
Yeah, so we called it at that point because it was A, had been so long, and B,
we could see it.
We had basically gotten to a tipping point where the momentum was going to start.
The pendulum
to be
was
with
in
us,
our favor,
and it was and it's one of those games you could play it out if you wanted to contribute to that. You can you can play all you want, no big deal.
Yeah,
but you don't have to grind it out to the bitter end of 18 or 15. You don't have to do that.
But anyway, overall, I think this game fit what its description was. I think it met that. But it's not for everybody.
Yeah, you just have to make sure that that's what you are
that's
going
what you
for
want.
and that's what you want from it.
Just be aware of that.
Yes. So, Napoleon's Imperium from Compass Games. Check it out. It's on their website if you want it. Big game. You need a lot of space for it as well.
We do. Yeah, it's a big map.
It's 2 maps.
We use some double-sided tape on the backside to kind of secure the map here. But yeah, it's a big game.
Yes. You could call it Axis and Allies Napoleonics.
I would agree.
It's a little bit different
More than
from
that,
but it's a similar type
style.
of feel.
Yeah.
In a way, with a little bit more interesting units, I think. So,
one other comment I want to have, because I know people are going to ask where we're at. We're not in a basement in a bombed-out building playing.
It just looks like we are.
Yeah, well, it's just the one unfinished wall in this basement. Very cool setup.
Yes.
This is our friend's basement. This is where Basement Con 1 was held. Basement Con 2 is now.
Yep.
And this is a fantastic experience. We've done this now twice. We're going to do it every year and really, really enjoyed it. We played, what's our third game?
Yes.
We played Crown of Roses. We played Dark Ages. Oh, this is our fourth game.
And
we played
Wars,
Cthulhu Wars, and now we've played Napoleon's Imperium. And I think tonight we're going to do Conquest of the Empire, the old Hasbro bookcase series or whatever they're called.
Yeah, I played that
Game
once
Master
with you,
series.
I think, right?
Yeah, I've got it. So, but anyway, we're not hostages. I'm not holding Alexander against his will. We are simply in our friend's unfinished basement. Don't blink. Stop blinking. They're going to call the police. But really a good experience, and this is what these games are made for.
Yeah, it's to get everyone together and have a laugh, and you are playing a game.
Yeah.
So, appreciate you tuning in. I've been Alexander from Players8.com.
And I'm Grant.